Oh, sorry. Are you able to hear me now? Are you able to hear me? Okay, then. Sorry for that. So I was saying from the previous class, we looked at public access of classes or class members. Now, somebody asked from the previous class, are there other kinds of access? And yes, I said yes, there are other kinds of access, and we have private access and protected access. Now, these access methods are called access modifiers. Access modifiers are basically the different ways in which the members of a class can be accessed. All right, the different ways in which the members of a class can be accessed. So the members of a class can be public members, they can be private, or they can be protected. So in the previous class, we looked at public members. Okay, so today we want to look at private and protected. And therefore, we are going to see how those what they are. So I'm going to introduce you to the concepts, and we see how they normally behave in code. So basically, we looked at public members. Now, private and protected are implement what we call data hiding. Data hiding. Data hiding is where you can hide the members of a class from being accessed from different other parts of the program. It's called data hiding, and it's a major. It's one of the characteristics of object-oriented programming. Data hiding, or what we call abstraction. Abstraction. So we are going to look at that. So I want, for instance, to just create a program that allows that helps us to enter the marks for 2 students, and then it computes the total and the average, and it uses a function to compute the total and average, and of course it uses classes and objects. You remember that program from the previous class where we defined a class. Always a class is defined at the before the main function. So we can call it class students. Okay, class students that way. And then you remember we used the public access modifier. The public access modifier basically tells the compiler these members of this class can be accessed from anywhere globally within the code, okay, or from the main function. They can be accessed, right? So we are going to declare how many subjects? Let's declare 3 subjects in math, English, and geography. Okay. Then we are going to have a public member called what? Double what? We are going to have a public member called double compute. Let's have double compute. And this is a function that basically does the following. When called, it will add English, math, and geo, and it will also add English, math plus geo divide by 3, right? In other words, it will compute for the total, and it will also compute for the average. Okay, so we have 3 public members and 1 public function. Okay, and when we come to the main function, we will basically declare 2 objects. So objects are declared using the name of the class. So students, we are going to say students what? We are going to say students, student 1, and students, student 2. So these are the members. These are not members. These are the objects of that class. This class called students. Okay, and then we are now going to define the subjects for student 1. So student 1 dot English is equals to 79. Student 1 dot math is equals to 67. The students, you see, and when I just do that, it brings something here. Just a minute. Student 1 dot dot geo is equals to 87. And then I will call this function, all right? Student1 dot. In fact, I don't have to call it there. Let me show you where I'm going to call it, okay? Okay, let's go to student2. I can actually copy this. I don't have to write the whole code. I can re-engineer that. So I'll just change this. Okay, I think you remember this. This should not be new. You remember this from the previous class. And of course, now I want to do what? I want to now print out the marks and the average. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to say total and average of student 1 is equals to, or can I have two functions? Let me have two functions, okay? Here, let me have two functions. Let me have this. Is going to be called int. I mean, it's going to have the int type, and then this is going to have double type. I think I don't have to copy. I don't have to do it from scratch. I can just paste. So I'm just going to define this as double because average can give us a decimal point. Okay. So do this. Right. That way. Good. Then I'm going to say, I'm going to come here, total of student 1. Total of student 1 is equals to student 1 dot. Now let me call what? I'm now calling the function, right? So the function here is what? Computes. In fact, I should have called it. Let me just call it because it's going to give me an error. You cannot define a function using the same name with another function. So I'm going to call this total, and I'm going to call this average because at least so that it can actually tell you what it is doing. AVG. So student 1 dot total. See that? And then I'm going to do the same for average for student 1. I'm just going to can you see? Sorry. Can you see when I just have my dot there to access it just gives me the things in the class that I can access. Can you see that? So I can just choose from there. I want to choose average, and then I'm going to have that. All right. Average. So this is basically a recap from the previous class. And then I'm going to copy and paste this and do it for student 2. So it's total of student 2, average of student 2. Yeah. And of course I have that. So let me build and run it and see how it's going to run. Okay, so it has already run. So let me share the screen for you. So let me share the screen. So are you able to see this? Can you see that? Yeah. Total of student 1, 233, average of student 1, 77. Total of student 2, 233, average of student 2, 77. Of course, it has given me duplicate values because I didn't change. Okay, I didn't change the values, but you get the concept, right? Just a minute. Let me share this screen here. So of course, if I change these values, of course, you understand that it's going to change. Yes, so so if I run it, of course, you're going to see that the changes are going to come. Yeah. So let me now share the screen. So as you can see here, total of student 2 does not changed yet. Let me see. Oh, can you see here? Student 1, I didn't change this, so it needs to be student 2, not student 1. So student 2 there. All right, let's run it again. Okay, let me share the screen. Now, as you can see, there's my output. Total of student 1, 233, 77. Total of student 2, 243, 81. You see that, right? So that's basically, this basically just a recap of what we did in the last class, the concept of public members. Now, what are private members? Private members are members of a class that cannot be accessed from outside the class itself, and therefore they implement what we call data hiding. All right. Now, private members by default, all members of a class, if you do not define, look at what I'm going to do here. Can you see I'm deleting public? I've deleted public there. Public was here. I've deleted it. Okay. Now, anytime you do not put public access modifier in a class, by default, all those members are private. Okay. By default, all those members are private. That what that means is the compiler cannot access them globally within the main function. The compiler cannot access them. They are private. They are hidden in the class. That's why we call it data hiding or abstraction. Okay. So for instance, I've removed public. Now let me run this program and see what will happen. Can you see how when I've run the program, it has given me an error. Can you see this the red block? It has given me an error. That's an error. Now this error, basically, the interpretation of the error is that here we are trying to access a member variable called English. This English is part of a class, but that English is private, meaning that it cannot be accessed within the main program. Okay, so basically, if you want to hide members so that they cannot be accessed from inside the main program, then they are going to be, you're going to use private. And by default, if you don't use public, just by default, if you don't use public or you don't use protected, by default, all the members are private if you don't use public or protected. Now, the same will happen if I just have private that way. Now, let me run the program and see, and you see what will happen. Can you see the same error? I've run the program, same error has occurred. Okay. In other words, the compiler is trying to access English, member variable English, but it can't see it because English is a what? It's a private member. And of course, you know that it gives you the notation of errors in a sequential form. So if we correct English and then we fail to correct mathematics, it's now going to show you math. Okay. So it shows you that these members are private. Okay. Now, private members are basically members that are hidden. Okay, that's just it for that. Members that are hidden from being accessed. Now, you can have a member that is public and other members that are private. Okay. For instance, I will have these ones, these members being public. I'll have these members being public, and then I'm going to have these particular functions being private. Okay, can you see what I've done? I've had the member variables. These are member variables. I have had them now being public, and the member functions being private. Okay, so what is going to happen now? Look at what is going to happen. Let me run it and see. You see? Can you see here? When I access this function called total, can you see it has agreed, it has allowed us to, it has actually seen these members, English, Math, Geo, because English, Math, and Geo, they are public. That's why there's no error, okay? But there's an error in what? Student1.total, meaning that this function, member function, is private, okay? Now, let me do this. I'll remove this private, and then I'm going to have this private here, okay? So we have only one member of a class being private, and it's this function. Now let's see what will happen. Let me run it. Now look what has happened. Can you see? It has now given me average. Average is now the private member which cannot be accessed inside the main function. You see what's happening there? So total can be accessed. Do you notice that? Total can be accessed, but average cannot be accessed. So that is basically the thing about private members, okay? Private members are members that you normally hide, okay? And you will discuss more about data hiding and how they are implemented in user interfaces when you do advanced object-oriented programming, Java, right? Where you can hide some members, some parts of a program from the user seeing, okay? That's basically the concept of private members, okay? Now, what are protected members? Let's now get to protected members. So let me remove this. Let me just get it the way it was, that way, okay? So what are protected members? Protected members are members that are private but can be accessed by child classes. Protected members are members of a class which are private but are accessible by child classes, okay? Now, this is now what brings us to the concept of child classes. Now, a child class is a class of another class, okay? A child class is a class of another class. Now, I'm going to give you an example here. Let me give you an example. I'm going to give you an example here. Just going to type I'm going to type a program, an example of a program, and I'll have it just as a comment so that you are able to read it, okay? So, write a Java sorry, it's not a Java program. I'm teaching Java, that's why I'm confusing that. Write a C++ program that allows, that uses a class called students to store the subjects. Sorry, to store the subjects that a student does, and that is English, Math, and Geography. So I'm just going to have the 3 subjects. It then uses a private, it then uses a child class that contains, sorry. It then uses a child class that contains, I hope that you can see, you're able to see what I'm typing here. It then uses a child class that contains a function for computing total, and a function, or let me just have a function for computing total so that the program cannot be too long for starters. So uses a write a C++ program that uses a class called students to store the subjects that a student does, okay? Members of class students are protected. Can you see that? All right, so it is just the same program like this one, where we define a class students, but then we are told these members are going to be protected. Are you together? Okay. So protected meaning that these functions these members cannot be accessed within the code. I mean within the main function or the main method, but they can be accessed by child classes. Now, how do we define child classes? Now, that is one that we need to know how to do. How do we define child classes? It is basically very, very simple. We are told that it then uses a child class that contains a function for computing total. So how do you define child classes? I'm going to delete this one so that you can see it from scratch. Okay, so the class, can you see now the class ends there? The class ends there because we are told it's just the class just stores the subjects that a student does, English, math, and geo, and those members of class students are protected. So that's just it for that. Okay, so how do you define now a child class for this class called students? This is how you come here. You say you say class. Let's give this child class a name. Okay, so this we're going to call it child students. Okay, we're going to call it child students so that you can know that it's a child class. Okay, class child students, and then you define what kind of class it comes from, what kind of what it is a child class of which class. Okay, so you come here and say students that way. Can you see then as I take that, it just brings, and then you have that. Okay, right? And then inside the child class, I'm now going to define a function for computing total. Okay, and the function I'm just going to say int total. See, that's how we define a function. Int total return English plus math plus geo. Just that. Now remember, English, math, and geo are protected members, but this is a child class. This is a child class. So we are really expecting, okay? We are really expecting that, sorry, this is supposed to be that way. We are expecting that this child class, all these members, see, it has used the members of this public class, I mean protected class. These members are going to be accessible because these are child class. Because protected members of a class are members that cannot be accessed in the main function or the main method, but they can be accessed by child classes. And if in the main method we use the child class, the functions of the child class, then we are able to actually do that program, or we are able to do some computations from the child class itself and not the main class. Okay, so what we are going to do here, we are just going to declare for one student, okay, or student one, student two. Okay, we are going to delete this. We're going to delete this. Okay. Okay. So let's see what will happen here. So we have members, protected members, and some members here. Okay. So let's see what will happen. So there's an error here, meaning that we have to put that because that's a class. Okay. We have to put that. All right. Now, can you see what has happened here? We have an error in English because English is a what? English is a protected member. Okay. It is a protected member. It cannot be accessed within, but it can be accessed inside the child class. It cannot be accessed from the main function, but it cannot be accessed inside here. So it cannot be accessed outside. Can you see that? Now, let me show you how we can actually access that member. It's a protected member. Okay, it's a protected member. So we are basically going to do this. Okay, we are basically going to do this instead of using students. You see, students is now the class. It is the students is the class that has protected members. So instead of using this class, we use this particular class, child students, because child students, at least the members can be accessed. Okay, so we are going to use child students. Okay, child students, and also here child students. I want us to go systematically, see the errors that are happening, then we debug those errors. Okay, all right. Now can you see also that also here we are still not able to enter this value? So what are we going to do? Or it's not able to access these values. What are we going to do? We are basically going to just come here, and then we are going to have these as public. Okay, inside here. Okay, we can actually say public students that way. Okay, in other words, now we are allowing the program to access. Now let's run this and see what will happen. May run it. So now I want you to see now what has happened. These members, we have less than 8 minutes remaining. We create another session after this one ends. These members, they are public here, and there's a function for total, but we still cannot access these members from the main method. Why? Because they are protected from this point. They are protected from this point, and they can only be accessed by this child class. Are we together? They can only be accessed by this child class. Okay. So both private and protected, they both give us a chance to hide data. Okay, they both give us a chance to hide data. Okay, now let me give another example here. So we have this as public. And then just a minute. Just a minute. Okay, so basically, just confirming something. Basically, the protected members, these are members that are within, they cannot be accessed from inside the main method, but they can be accessed from the child class. So I want you to remember the concept of child class here. Okay, remember that concept of child class, how we define a child class. Okay, what if we came here and we just had a function for setting the subjects? Okay, so we are going to say set subjects that way, and then this function is going to allow us to set the particular subject. Okay, so you're going to say set English. Set is basically used to initialize. Okay, so I'm going to use void set void set math. What's happening here? Sorry. Void set geo. Then you're going to have another function called total. That will allow us to let's just first work with these ones, and then let's delete that. See, we have less than 3 minutes remaining. I'll create another session, student one dot. So I'm going to use set. Okay, dot set sorry. Okay, I'm going to have another function, and this is called a virtual function. A virtual function is basically used when we are using virtual functions are used when we are using child classes especially, and when we are dealing with, there's a concept called polymorphism, and we're going to look at that. But anyway, this virtual function is going to be used to basically allow us to access that member which is protected. Okay? So we are trying to access the member which is protected. So we are going to use a virtual function, and virtual function, we are just going to say int, and we are going to call it, the virtual function is normally, you use the name of the child class. Okay, int child students, and then you use two operators, two colon operators, and then we use the get. Okay, and child students, and then we can say int Get English. I'm going to use Get English. We give it a void, meaning that it cannot access until it goes to the main method. And then, because it's a function, we say what is being gotten or what is being fetched. Okay, so return English. Can you see that?